So I'm Dr. Sarah Tregenza, and I'm the Asia Pacific Oncology Medical Affairs Director at Pierre Fabre. And I'm going to be a bit of a manalist today, so moderator slash panelist. And I'm delighted to have my esteemed fellow panelists with me. So Owen Smith, who's the Vice President and General Manager at BMS, and Dmitri Egorov, who is the Senior Scientific Engagement Lead at BeOne, formerly Beijing. And our session today, we really want to give you some practical tips of how we can get out of global's blind spot being in Australian pharma. And we thought we'd open with a bit of a word cloud to also get your thoughts on this. So there should be a QR code. And we wanted you to enter what you think is the number one area where Australia can lead as an affiliate in global pharma. And you can do that throughout the session as we talk as well, and we're going to bring that up towards the end. So the first topic I wanted to throw to Dmitri and Owen was, what do you think are the unique barriers we face in Australia as a global pharma organisation? So I might start with Owen for this one.
Thanks, Sarah. And can I start by saying I genuinely am as short as the photograph makes me look? Just for any avoidance of doubt there. And secondly, can I apologise to everybody for me being back up here again? I don't know what I've done to deserve being asked to appear twice today, or what sin I've committed, but bear with me. And the question was again, Sarah, what? Sorry, I was too busy telling jokes then, or sort of telling jokes. I do remember, actually. So what do we got that's unique about Australia and is problematic? Well, I think the obvious things are,
Sorry, the barriers. I was meant to start with the barriers. Sorry,
yeah, you guys know what they are. We are a very long way away from everywhere. So that's just an inevitability that we're a long way away. Secondly, I think there is a pretty straightforward fundamental reality, which was a relatively small country, and therefore for an industry that is global and thinks globally and thinks about P&Ls at a global level and thinks about return on dollars that are invested globally. As I said earlier on, there's opportunity everywhere you look for the pharmaceutical industry to spend our money. There's a fundamental problem, which is Australia is a relatively small market. There's a homegrown problem, which is we haven't invested over a long time in our industry sufficiently, and therefore there is a perception that we're a tough market to crack and a tough market to earn returns. And there is also a long-standing perception that Australia is a tough market because there's such a robust HTA process that is perceived, because it is very often as a means of rationing expenditure. So Australia is thought as a tough place to come. And all of those are problems for us. But I think there are answers and solutions to all of those problems. And perhaps we can talk about the fun bit and the upside later on.
Thank you, Owen. And what about you, Dmitri? What do you think are some of our biggest barriers in Australia?
I think everyone will agree, because I can kind of at the scientific engagement and the forefront of actually discussing the oncologists what the real problems are and challenges. So I think one of them is actually funding next generation sequencing as well. We do have programs run by certain companies. However, the question's been asked so commonly: where is the lab? How quickly turnaround time for the actual reports? And it's coming from the actual patient's treatment, because the treatment has changed so much. Modalities and innovative treatment in Australia coming through, it's quite broad, and you need to put the patient into specific targeted therapies clinical trials. And without assessing that data report quickly enough, you're losing time. So, and most of the time, these patients are going through the 3 or 4 lines of therapy already. So they don't have time to actually wait. So I think this is one of the challenges. I can give example, that's all.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think just to add to that, I think I echo a lot of my panelists' comments. So I've seen really the market size and pricing being a challenge for Australia to lead, and potentially where it's deprioritised in a launch sequence or potentially even altogether in regards to pricing issues. And as a result of that, sometimes engagement of our HCPs in global projects or trials despite their great expertise.
So I can actually add, sometimes Australia, we have really good ecosystem and regulatory landscape to do trials really well. And we're well actually known to have a really quick startup as well. So sometimes we should be like planned from day one as a default, but often it's forgotten, and at global planning we're kind of behind. That's another challenge, I guess.
So we want to focus on the positives. So we've discussed some of the barriers, but now we really want to get to what are some unique strengths we have in Australia where we can really shine. And I might start with Owen again for that question.
See, I think this is quite easy to answer, and several people have used the phrase already today that I felt was very risque, about calling bullshit. What isn't bullshit is that Australia's got some of the best talent in our industry and in many other industries. You know, I've worked in different industries and in government and out of government and in different parts of the world, including in Australia, and I don't think I've ever come across such an diverse but uniformly, intellectually powerful group of people as I have done in the industry in Australia. It's a very genuine strength of our industry here, and one that we leverage quite a lot, but perhaps as not as much as we ought to. We know there are people who've gone on from Australia to do great things around the world, but there are great people in Australia who never want to leave Australia, and we all know why, because it's a wonderful place to live, doing great work here. So people is one thing. Second thing is, without a doubt, the external talent. We've got some of the greatest KOLs, some of the greatest minds in medicine in Australia. Choose a therapy area, you've got a handful of global TLs based in hospital near you, wherever you are in Australia, east or west coast. And the truth is, that's not replicated in many markets around the world. So that's a huge strength. And the system itself, that public-private mixed economy that we have here in Australia that we don't talk enough about, but is fairly unique around the world. The very nature of the underpinning health system here is really strong, and it's getting better. We're getting better at running trials here. We're getting better at realizing some of the potential within that system. And the very last thing I was going to say is, in contrast to the really quite depressing stats we saw about perception amongst that group of doctors about our industry, I think in Australia there's a huge amount of positivity about our industry. It is deeply unusual to have health ministers make announcements about new medicines being made available for patients. That doesn't happen in most parts of the world, and it certainly doesn't get reported in a generally uniformly positive way, as happens in Australia. So that's something we should be capitalising on to a far greater extent, and recognising within ourselves that we've got this great, relative wellspring of positivity for the industry that we should be capitalising more on and leaning into. So yeah, we need to do more to exploit that, but there's a good bedrock there for us to build on already, in my view.
Excellent. Thank you, Owen. And Dmitri, what do you think are some of the unique strengths we can shine in Australia?
Well, I completely agree with Owen about the quality of the investigators, and actually the working with the private network and public sector as well. It helps a lot. But the one aspect I want to highlight, that it's actually diversity as well. Sometimes there's a misconception that Australia is a small country and we don't have broad ethnicity, for example, right? So, and it's actually aligned with the real world evidence data that we can do that. I can give you one example. It was a while ago during the COVID time, conducting studies for specific race as well. So global planning have no idea we actually can do this type of trials. Now I think they should be advocating that at the global level, and the best way to do it through science. Early scientific engagements have a very big impact. So the earlier you speak, earlier you open your books, in brackets, so helps a lot, because that means travels, that scientific engagement impact travels fast globally. That's how you achieve the actually put Australia and New Zealand on the map.
Fantastic, thank you. And if I just add a few points myself, in my experience, some areas where Australia can really shine is we've got some excellent registries in Australia, high quality registries where we can quickly address real world evidence and data gaps through those registries. R&D, a lot of high calibre R&D in Australia with the trials and diversity, as my fellow panellists mentioned. And for me also, we've got unique expertise in specific disease or tumour types in Australia. So I'm focused in oncology. So for example, melanoma is known as Australia's cancer, and definitely Australia shines highly in that field for all the companies involved in melanoma as well. So I think there's some areas where we can really shine. So moving on, I thought we'd go more specifically to a practical example where in each of your companies you've been able to really shine on your global company stage. So I might go in sequence again and start with you, Owen.
Well, I mentioned this one earlier on. I'm going to unashamedly mention it again because it's in the news and it's really important, and it is a world first out of Australia, which was the announcement about access, reimbursed access being provided in Australia once it gets onto the PBS for immunotherapies, those made by BMS, and I'm sure in time other companies too. That genuinely is, as I said, a world's first. There is nowhere else in the world where we will have access, equitable access for patients with rare cancers, those whom Richard has so eloquently represented for so many years, and those with more common cancers, side by side, seeing equal reimbursement, even where there is no TGA registered license for the rare cancer indication. That isn't happening anywhere else in the world, and it's evidence of a novel approach to reimbursement and a novel partnership, if you like, between regulatory science and policy around reimbursement and a funding model, and industry and government working side by side to create that. And that was made in Australia without input in the usual way in which you'd get it from global colleagues, because it required very fine, detailed local understanding of the system and how we would make it work here. And that's, I think, an excellent example of how we can, not just in R&D, but also in commercialization and access projects, produce things in Australia that are genuinely innovative, genuinely world-class, and make a massive, genuine potential benefit for patients, and are scalable and exportable from our shores around the world. So that's my recent example.
Congratulations. Yeah, it's a wonderful example. And Dmitri, do you have a specific example you could share?
Yes, so I guess the BeOne, or formerly non-Beijing, started operation in Australia a while ago. And by default, we'll put in Australia first. So especially in early phase asset development. And it does give innovative targeted modalities access to patients as well. Also, you build really good relationship with the actual KOLs and investigators who are first in human trials, first assets, innovative one, have access to Australian patients, meaning then faster. So we tend to go to geographies a little bit differently. We're not only concentrating on the APAC countries, we actually go Southeast Asia, Latin America, and other geographies where the actual access very not very viable. So that's our strategy, and it does work well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dmitri. And from my perspective, an example I can share, my company, we're working in colorectal cancer, and you may have seen the Australian story. We know there's a huge increase in young onset cancers, in particular colorectal cancer. So our registrational trial, the average patient was around 60 years old. So there was a huge data gap understanding the young onset cancer. And within 3 months, I think, of signing a contract with the TRAC registry, who's part of BioGrid, the group of different tumour stream registries, we were able to get data which was presented at ASCO GI in January this year. And it showed groundbreaking data because in the trial population, average 60 years old, the mutation rate for BRAF was 12%. And BRAF have half the survival rate of a non-BRAF colorectal cancer. And in this registry study, local Australian registry, they segmented the patients looking at patients 18 to 39 years old, as opposed to trials tend to look at under 50, over 50. So they went to 18 and 39 years old, 40 to 59 years old and 60 plus. And what we showed through that data was that the mutation rate for BRAF was double that of the average population in under 39-year-olds. So again, Australia was able to shine by getting data within 3 months, high-quality data that was presented at an international conference that showed groundbreaking results the company could action with young-onset cancer patients. So I think we're down to our final...
Can I add one more? I think government had a very terrific decision to actually subsidize the 25 or 30% if you actually invest in Australia. It was actually fundamental switching time when the actual trials increase here. Just a comment. It's advantage.
Definitely. Okay, so we might throw back to the QR code if I can get our tech wizards to show the world cloud. So this is what you, the audience, all said, areas where we can shine. So we want to leave on a high note with practical ways we can shine in Australia in global pharma. So again, I want to ask each of you in one sentence, could you share one thing you think any delegate could go back to their work and focus on to make Australia shine? So Owen, I'll throw to you first.
Well, I can see the results here, and interesting, the thing I was going to say is exactly that, innovation. I think whatever you do, in whatever part of the industry you work in, concentrate on excellence and trying to deliver a breakthrough of some sort, no matter how large or small, not necessarily a breakthrough in terms of a new treatment, obviously, but a breakthrough in communicating better or dealing with patients better or making sure that we deal better with nurses, for example. Whatever your area expertise is in the company or the organization you work for, concentrate on being excellent and delivering a breakthrough, and then make sure the rest of the company, wherever that is in the world, sees the excellence with which you're executing.
I'm going to be really brief. Our Northern Star should be patient-centric. Thank you.
Thank you. And my final one is addressing global data gaps with local registries. So I think we're over time. So thank you so much to my fellow panelists, and thanks, Steve, for the opportunity to discuss this topic.
Thank you.